I caught my daughter cheating with the neighbor. I thought that was the limit. But no, my wife fell into his arms too. And then, the biggest shock hit. The final man to betray me was my own father. My name is Thomas Miller, 45 years old, living in a quiet small town in Oregon, USA. I had a seemingly stable home, a wife of nearly 20 years and an only daughter, Emily, 17 this year. I once thought I was a lucky man, not wealthy but with a steady job, not prestigious but always devoted to my family. And then, in one afternoon, my world shattered. It was a typical Saturday. I'd just finished mowing the backyard, sweat still on my collar, when I heard giggles from the fence. Our neighbor's house belonged to Rick, a man in his 30s, divorced, living alone, known for chatting up married women. I walked toward the fence, intending a casual greeting, but then I froze. Behind the garage, out of sight from the main house, I saw Emily, my daughter, standing close to Rick. They weren't keeping distance. His hand rested on her hip, and Emily laughed as if it was natural. My 17-year-old well-mannered daughter, whom I used to drive to school every morning, was nestled in the arms of a man nearly 20 years older, and our neighbor. I didn't shout. I didn't charge in swinging like in the movies. I just stood there, in a painful, numbing silence. It felt like someone was crushing my heart. When Emily noticed me, her expression shifted, from surprise to panic, then she looked down. Rick stepped back, stammering something I didn't care to hear. I said only one sentence, in a low, cold voice. "Get inside. Now." Emily followed me, her steps heavy, while Rick slunk away like a rat caught in headlights. I didn't hit her, didn't yell, but that night I sat across from Emily and said clearly, "Starting tomorrow, you're going to a summer military boot camp. By the end of it, you'll learn what discipline and self-respect mean." Emily sobbed. She apologized. She said it was just a whim. But I didn't soften. I'm not a strict father, but I knew if I didn't set boundaries now, she'd never learn right from wrong. I arranged everything in 3 days. Emily was sent to a military school in southern Oregon, where I believed 5 a.m. drills and team exercises under the blazing sun would teach her what I'd failed to in 17 years as a father. When I saw her off, I didn't wish her luck. I just looked into her eyes. "When you return, show me a person you don't have to hide from." I thought it ended there. I thought after that shock, I could return to a peaceful life with my wife. But I didn't know a greater tragedy was silently creeping into every corner of our home, because just 2 weeks after Emily left, I discovered my wife, my partner of nearly 20 years, was also cheating. And her lover was Rick, the filthy neighbor. I don't know where to begin, because I never imagined that after everything, my wife, my partner of nearly 20 years, would hide such a filthy secret behind my back. Rick, the neighbor who already disgusted me, seemed to vanish after the incident with Emily. I didn't see him around much. No more laughter over the fence. No more glances through the kitchen window. But it turns out he just changed targets. It started with small signs. My wife, Linda, began dressing nicer for grocery runs. Light makeup, perfume, smiling more. At first I didn't think much of it. I thought she was regaining her spirits after Emily's shock, but then I noticed, every Thursday, when I usually had late meetings at work, Linda always had an excuse to go out for a stress relief walk, and each time she returned, she seemed distracted, tired. I started to feel uneasy. One Thursday evening I pretended to have overtime but parked a block away, waiting. At 7 p.m. Linda stepped out. Leggings, tight top, nothing but her phone. I followed, quietly, without a sound. She turned down a small path behind the garden, leading straight to Rick's house. I hid behind a bush, fists clenched, as she rang the bell. The door opened, Rick stepped out in a white tee and sweatpants, a sleazy smile on his face, and then Linda walked into his house. The door closed, not locked, but closed enough for the worst things to happen behind it. I stood there for a long time. My heart didn't race, didn't scream, it just emptied. I didn't barge in to catch them, I didn't smash anything, didn't confront, because I knew the only thing holding me together was clarity. I went home, showered, poured a glass of bourbon. Sitting in my familiar armchair by the window, I stared at the pitch-black sky, wondering, what did all these years of trust amount to? Linda came home around 9 p.m. She tried to act normal, but I caught the faint scent of men's cologne on her collar. I didn't say anything right away. I just looked at her, and looked that made her avert her eyes. That night, when Emily called from camp, I tried to sound normal. I didn't want her to know that just 2 weeks after she left, her mother had fallen into the arms of the man who once seduced her. I saved the confrontation for Saturday night. We sat in the kitchen. No lights, just the glow from the stove casting shadows on Linda's face. I asked, "How many times have you been to Rick's house?" She froze, then stammered, "What? What are you talking about?" I sipped my water, voice eerily calm. "Don't lie anymore. I saw everything." Linda looked down. Her hands trembled slightly. A minute later, she sobbed, not out of remorse, but because she was caught. She said it was a temporary lapse, that she was lonely, that I was distant, that things cracked when Emily left. Familiar excuses I'd heard before, from Emily. But I didn't yell. I just said, "This is the first time and the last. If you step out of line again, I'll never forgive you." Linda nodded. She promised to end it. I wanted to believe. A small part of me still wanted to save this family. Weeks later, we decided to move to another town, away from Rick, away from the awful memories. I quit my job. Linda resigned too. Emily would return to school in the fall. I hoped, truly hoped, things could start anew. But I didn't know. The worst nightmare was yet to come. Because the next betrayer wasn't a stranger, it was my own father. When we moved to the new town, I thought it was over. I told myself forgiveness was a way to start again, that even if Linda had erred, if she truly turned back, I could salvage our home, for Emily's sake. We rented a small wooden house by the forest, quiet, with a wide backyard and morning light flooding in. Emily restarted school, Linda stayed home, tending the garden, cooking, painting, her old passion, she said. A few weeks later, my father called. "Heard you moved?" "I'm thinking of visiting for a few days. Retired now, nothing to do." I hesitated. We were never close, but he was my father. A gruff, hot-tempered man, but, at least I thought, someone who put family first. I agreed. 3 days later, he arrived, bag in hand, cigarette in mouth, the same familiar figure from my childhood. At first, things were normal. He helped me fix the fence, clear the shed. Evenings we three ate dinner, talked about old times. Linda acted normal, quiet, not overly friendly, or so I thought. But then, one Friday afternoon, I came home earlier than planned. The front door was unlocked. The house was eerily silent. No TV, no footsteps, just a faint laugh, very soft, coming from the upstairs bedroom. My heart pounded. I climbed the stairs slowly, silently. The bedroom door was ajar. I pushed it lightly, and what I saw made my blood run cold. Linda, my wife, was lying naked on the bed, and the man holding her from behind was my father. I said nothing, not a sound. I just stood there, like a statue, watched them scramble, faces pale. Linda pulled the sheet to cover herself. He stumbled, trying to pull on his pants. "Tom, let me explain," he stammered. I raised my hand, silencing him. I turned, walked out of the room, down to the kitchen, opened the fridge, poured a glass of water. I didn't scream, didn't smash anything. I was just empty. In my life, I'd never felt so invisible. Not because of pain, but because I was no longer his son. Minutes later, Linda came down, eyes red in a thin robe, trembling. I'm sorry. You have to believe me. I don't know how this happened." I gave a bitter laugh, not out of anger, but out of exhaustion. You slept with the man I called my father, and you call it, I don't know how." She didn't answer, just sobbed, collapsing on the kitchen floor. I turned away. That night I didn't sleep. I sat alone on the porch, smoking, a habit I quit at 30. My father knocked on my door 3 times, but I didn't open. Linda stayed silent all evening. I needed a plan, because this time I wouldn't forgive. But I wouldn't make a scene yet. I wanted an ending fitting for all this betrayal, and it had to happen in front of everyone who thought our family was perfect. I began preparing, called my mother-in-law, invited her and my father-in-law for a small, intimate family gathering that weekend. I sent letters to close relatives. Linda knew nothing. She thought I'd forgiven her like before. My father hid in his room, avoiding my gaze. Good. Let them think I was weak. Let them think I'd stay silent. But this time, I'd write the script for that gathering. It took 3 days to plan, not out of vengeful rage, but because I knew truth doesn't need shouting, it just needs to be revealed at the right time, right place, and let it explode. I chose a Sunday afternoon. Clear skies, no clouds. A perfect day for a family dinner. Linda was clueless. She thought I was mending things. She cooked her mother's favorite casserole, picked a new tablecloth, lit scented candles. I just smiled, moved lightly, as if everything was going to plan. At 4 p.m. my in-laws' car pulled up. They stepped out, carrying a basket of apple pies and wine bottles. "Hey, Tom, long time," my father-in-law said cheerfully. "He heard you moved, wanted to see the new place." My mother-in-law smiled kindly. I hugged her, invited them in. Then came my aunt and uncle and 2 cousins. 8 people total. Enough for a small audience for a play with no rehearsed actors. My father sat at the table's end, face tense, eyes dodging mine. Linda tried to be cheerful, serving wine, food, as if to mask the strange air in the house. I waited for the moment when everyone was chatting, glasses raised, laughter ringing. I stood, gently, slowly. "Before we eat, I have something to share. We're family, and family should know what's really happening." The table fell silent. Eyes turned to me. I stepped to the side, opened the laptop I'd set on the shelf, plugged it into the large TV in the living room. In seconds, a video played, clear quality, loud enough no one could pretend not to hear. On it, Linda and my father, naked, unmistakable, no room for denial, embracing, in the very room we called our home. No one spoke. A wine glass fell, shattering. My mother-in-law gasped, hand trembling over her mouth. My aunt whispered, "My God." My father stood abruptly but found no words. Linda collapsed, head and hands shaking violently. I didn't look at them. I looked into the eyes of each relative. This is the woman I once loved. This is the man who said I was his pride. They, right in this house, stabbed me in the back. I don't need pity or defense. I just want you to see the truth. And today, it's laid bare. No one dared speak. The silence was the silence of collapse. Linda looked up, tears streaming, screaming. "What more do you want? You've taken everything, you've destroyed me." I stepped closer, looking straight at her. "I destroyed nothing. You burned yourself. I just turned on the light, to show how far the fire spread." I turned to my father, now stiff as stone. "And you? From this moment, I'm no longer your son." I went upstairs, grabbed the divorce papers I'd prepared, and placed them before Linda. "Sign it. No disputes. I bought this house. It's mine. Where you go, what you do after today, I don't care." Linda wailed, collapsing again. But no one defended her. My mother-in-law sobbed, frozen. My aunt wiped tears. No one looked at Linda with pity anymore. Only disgust. I stood in the room I'd built with love, watching it crumble. Not because I broke it, but because the truth, finally, was revealed at the right moment. I left that house the next morning, not much luggage. Just a suitcase of clothes, some papers, and a small wooden box with old family photos. now just relics of the past. I left everything to Linda, not out of softness, but because I didn't want anything tied to those years of lies. That house, that dining table, that sofa, all stained with betrayal. After the fateful gathering, Linda said nothing more. She signed the divorce papers without resistance. My father left that night, no one knew where, and I moved to a town 300 miles away, where no one knew me. I rented a small wooden cabin by a lake. Alone, no wife, no daughter, no father, just silence. The thing I'd lost for nearly 20 years. At first I didn't feel free, I just felt empty. I woke each morning, made coffee, looked at the calm lake. No Linda calling from the kitchen, no Emily whining about breakfast without pancakes. I thought I'd cry, break down, feel pain, but strangely, I shed no tears. Because I realized the greatest pain is when your heart ran dry long ago. A week later, my mother-in-law called. "Tom, Linda's not okay. She doesn't eat, doesn't sleep, just sits for hours. Relatives visit, she doesn't talk. Yesterday the doctor diagnosed severe depression with paranoid tendencies." I stayed silent. Not because I felt relieved or gloated, just I had no emotions left for Linda. I replied, voice flat, "She chose that path. I was just the last to know the truth." My mother-in-law cried over the phone. She once defended Linda fiercely, blamed me for not keeping her, called me too cold. But now she had nothing to say, because everyone saw it. Clear, raw, undeniable. 3 weeks later I got a letter from Emily, my daughter. "Dad, I'm sorry. I know you suffered because of me. But I didn't know. Mom betrayed you like that. I heard from Aunt. I'm shocked. I don't know how to face her anymore." I read it, heart heavy. I sent Emily away to learn a life lesson I never expected her mother would teach it in the worst way. I wrote back, "Emily, I'm not mad anymore, I just hope you learn. In life, some mistakes can be fixed, but some follow you forever, like a shadow. I hope you learn to respect others, and value trust when you have it. Your mother, that's between adults. You don't need to carry it." Emily didn't reply right away, but I knew she was thinking. As for my father, I didn't reach out. No need. My mother died when I was 14, and he always said, "No one can replace your mom." Now I understood. Some people preach morals, but betray the fastest. A month later, I heard he had a car accident, broken leg, hospitalized. The hospital called because I was still his closest kin on record. I only said, "I think he should call the woman he once held, not me." I hung up. No hate, no pity. I just stepped out of their lives. My new life began, not with applause nor with open arms. It began with silence, a complete void, a feeling close to loneliness, but strangely not scary. I lived alone in the small cabin by the lake, 15 minutes from the nearest town. Mornings I woke at 6, made coffee, opened the window for sunrise. Afternoons, I walked to the lake's edge. Evenings I read or sat by the fireplace with old jazz. No arguments, no suspicious glances, no one asking where's the money, just me and myself. They say men after divorce often turn to alcohol, women, or self-destruction. I didn't choose that path. I chose to slow down. I started a journal, something I never thought I'd do at this age. I wrote small feelings. Today the lake had mist. Today a strange bird perched on the railing. Today my coffee wasn't as bitter. I learned to care for myself. Cooking, cleaning, fixing pipes, mowing grass. Things that seemed ordinary but I never did before, too busy caring for others. Now I realized, my whole life I lived to please others. And now, for the first time, I lived to please myself. In the 3rd month, I stopped by an old bookstore in town. Not because I loved books, but because it was pouring and I needed shelter. The owner was a brown-haired woman my age. Her eyes sparkled, her voice soft like flipping old pages. Her name was Claire. We chatted briefly. About books, coffee, weather. Nothing special. But when I left, I felt a warmth inside. I didn't rush, didn't jump into a new relationship, but the next day, I returned. Not because it was raining, not to buy books, just I wanted to see her again. Claire didn't pry. She didn't try to uncover me like Linda once did. She didn't care what I did, what I'd been through. She just smiled and asked, "Today, do you need a book to forget or to remember?" I laughed, the first real laugh in months. I need one to understand why I endured so long. She handed me a worn copy of Man's Search for Meaning. I read it in one night and cried, not from regret, but because I finally understood. I didn't need revenge to feel justice. I just needed freedom and a reason to live for myself. I thought I'd closed everything. I lived quietly in the new town where no one knew who I was, what I'd been through, and no one forced me to tell. I didn't think of Linda much anymore. I didn't dream of her. Didn't imagine her familiar face at the breakfast table. She, once my everything, now just a name that drifted through my mind when it rained. But that morning, while mowing the lawn, I got a call from my ex-mother-in-law. I hesitated, but answered. "Tom, it's me. Sorry to bother, but..." "Linda's in a mental hospital. Doctors say she's showing cognitive disorders. She doesn't talk, doesn't eat, doesn't sleep, just sits staring out the window calling your name. And Emily's..." I froze, not because I felt pity, but because I didn't know what to feel. "They say, if family visits, it might help, if you could..." She trailed off, afraid of rejection. I looked at the sky. Fall in this town was colder than I expected. Leaves fell thickly on the path before my yard. I set the phone down without a word. That afternoon I drove to the hospital. I didn't know why. I didn't think I'd forgive or soften. I just wanted to see her one last time, to confirm leaving was the right choice. Linda sat in a small room, oversized patient gown, hair no longer neat. She was thinner, eyes sunken, skin ghostly pale. When she saw me, she looked up, dazed. Then tears spilled uncontrollably. "Tom, I'm sorry. I don't know what's real anymore." I said nothing, just sat on the chair by her bed, placing a hot tea on the table. After a while, she whispered, "Do you hate me?" I sighed, voice even. "I don't have enough love left to hate, Linda." We sat like that, silently, not looking at each other. I didn't cry, didn't blame. Because I knew she'd been consumed by her own choices. She once had everything, a family, a loving husband, a good daughter, but she traded it all. For what? Ruin. Not by me, by herself. Before leaving, I stood, saying softly, "Try to live. If not for anyone, for Emily. As for me, I'm no longer part of this story." She sobbed, but I didn't turn back. I didn't need to see those tears. Because tears only fall when you lose something truly precious. And I was what she lost forever. I left the hospital without looking back. Not because I was cruel, but because if I stayed a minute longer, I'd fall back into the pit of emotions that killed me once. I was no longer the man who forgave out of duty, no longer the one clinging to a burned-down home. I'd started again, and this time, for myself. That evening, back in town, I stopped by Claire's bookstore. She was arranging the mystery section, glasses on, hair tied, hands dusted with book grime. She saw me, smiled. "You look tired." I nodded. Today was heavy, but necessary. She didn't pry, didn't probe. Claire had a strange way of listening, with silence. A silence that wasn't awkward, didn't pressure, just enough to make me feel at peace. I picked a book, sat by the window where sunlight warmed me. Claire brought a hot mint tea. "I don't know how much darkness your past holds, but I know no one stays in it if they still seek light." I looked at her, wordless, but a strange feeling rose inside. Not a rushed spark, not the reckless love of youth, but a connection. A quiet bond between two people who'd walked through wounds. From then, I visited the bookstore more, not just for books, but for Claire. We talked small things. Yesterday's rain lasted hours. The stray cat by the door. The town's fall fair. I never told her about Linda, about my father Rick, or the pains that cut through my life. But one day, as she folded a book's page, she said softly, "I don't need your past, but if you ever want to tell, I'll listen. No judgment, no interruptions." I looked up. No one had ever said something so gentle. No one had made me feel I could be myself, not forcing strength, not playing a role. I smiled. For the first time in months, I truly felt my heart soften. No more storms, no more rage, just a man who'd lost everything, quietly finding himself again. Late fall. Golden leaves blanketed the path outside the bookstore. I was clearing my yard when the phone rang, an unfamiliar number, but oddly familiar. I hesitated, then answered. "Dad?" "It's me, Emily." I stood, frozen for seconds. Her voice was the same, soft, a bit nervous, slightly hoarse like she'd just woken. But this time, I heard something new. Sincerity. "Are you free? I want to meet." I didn't ask why, didn't interrogate, just said, "You don't need an appointment to see me, just want to." We met at a small cafe at the town's edge with big glass windows facing pine forests. Emily sat across, thinner, more mature, her eyes wiser. "How long have you lived here?" "Almost half a year." "Is everything okay?" I looked at her, then smiled faintly. "If it wasn't, I wouldn't be the dad you knew. But it's okay, now I'm learning to live for myself." Emily looked down. After a pause, she said, "I'm sorry for everything back then, for betraying your trust, for not seeing how much you carried that no one noticed." I went quiet. Maybe this was the apology I'd waited for, not to blame, but to close the chapter. I put my hand on hers, voice calm. "You don't need to apologize. All I want is for you not to repeat that mistake with anyone else, because not everyone's strong enough to stand like I did." Emily bit her lip, eyes red, then suddenly asked, "Are you still mad at Mom?" I paused. I thought of Linda, the woman who was my wife, Emily's mother, who burned our family herself. "I'm not mad, I just don't feel anything anymore. She's an old chapter. I've closed it." Emily nodded, tears falling, but no wails like before. I knew my daughter had grown. That afternoon we walked around the lake, not talking much, but each step, each glance, was a quiet healing. Before parting, Emily hugged me tightly. "Dad, I'm proud to be your daughter." I didn't reply, just patted her back, like the hugs when she was learning to walk, only this time I hugged an adult. Not a child to teach, but a companion to walk with. Winter came early here. The first cold winds swept the porch, carrying pine and warm lake vapor from fall's sun. I sat on my familiar wooden chair outside, holding hot coffee, feet wrapped in an old wool blanket from last month's flea market. Before me, the lake was still. No ripples. No sound. Just faint light piercing thin mist, creating an almost unreal scene. I thought of myself. Not the old Thomas, betrayed by wife, daughter, father. Not the man who silently carried a family no one noticed. Not the one lonely in his own home. Now, I was me. Imperfect, but real. Not rich, but enough. No longer chasing others' approval. Just making sure my heart stayed still when I looked in the mirror. Claire remained my companion. Gentle, subtle, undemanding, unpossessive. We didn't bind each other with grand promises. We just existed together, each day, fully. She didn't ask about Linda, didn't push me to share my shocks, never said, "Forget it," because she knew. Some pains don't need forgetting. It's enough when remembering no longer hurts. Every Saturday afternoon, we read in her shop, sometimes sipping tea, sometimes silent, but no one felt uneasy. That was the silence, of those who'd walked through storms. Emily called every few weeks. Our talks lost their distance. No more, "Are you mad at me?" but, "Dad, I cooked dinner for my roommate, not burned but salty." "Dad, I read a great book, I'll send it to you." I realized true healing doesn't start with apologies, but with people living better from their mistakes. Linda didn't reach out. I heard she's still in treatment, more stable. I don't wish her suffering, or her return. I just hope, if she ever recovers, she'll value what she had, not for me, but to not repeat it with the next. My father? I never called. Don't expect him to. Some ties, rotted to the core, are best left to vanish. I didn't need to win, didn't need to teach a lesson. I just needed to rebuild my life, kinder, gentler, truer. Once, Claire asked, "If you could go back, before it all fell apart, would you change anything?" I thought, then shook my head. No. Because the worst things pushed me out of where I didn't belong and brought me to the life I should have lived long ago. Now, I'm not a shadow in my own family. I'm Thomas, an ordinary man, with a life not dazzling but steady, with people beside me, not from duty but because they want to be. And if anyone reading this feels abandoned, betrayed, overlooked, I'll tell you one thing: sometimes silence is the loudest voice of self-respect. And letting go isn't surrender, but how you rewrite your life with your own hands.